Have you ever guys looked at a plant and wondered if you could take care of it or not? Well, you've come to the right place, Bonsai and Botany right here. And we're going to be covering the very basics on plant care, more specifically succulents and jade trees, because I feel like they're either the most common or the easiest to take care of. My baby, my pride and joy, Rafiki. I called him Rafiki because it reminds me of the tree in The Lion King. If you look really closely at the trunk and just the way it grows. And it's one of my favorite childhood movies. And it was the first one that I watched actually when I came over to the States from Thailand. So very awesome. And I've been taking care of this tree for around 19 years now. It's about 19 years old. And so, yeah. It's an awesome little guy. I've made a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors, and so it was a long journey, but I'm glad to share it with you, and I hope that these videos will help you progress in the future of taking care of your plants. Jades are pretty forgiving plants, but a lot of times you can tend to neglect them or forget that they're in the corner of your house. And they do well inside, but they do need a lot of sunlight. And so you know if it needs more sunlight if the petals are a darker green. I don't think I have an example of a darker green petal, but it'll be a very dark kind of pine green, and that means it needs more sunlight. So what the plant is trying to do is create more chlorophyll so that it can get the energy that it needs. They're very fragile, but very forgiving at the same time. And so when it gets enough sunlight, the petals, like I said earlier, will get a very light green and a little bit of a red around the edges. And they do well actually in direct sunlight. I've experimented with Rafiki a few times and left him actually in the whole entire summer. And actually that's where he really grew, so I'm gonna make the assumption that they really do thrive in sunlight. But I do like keeping him inside when I have guests and stuff like that, just because it's an awesome conversation and a very cool plant in my opinion. If you notice the petal that I took off earlier, this is a prime example of physical damage. The problem with physical damage and fungal damage is, well, sometimes you can't really tell the difference, but there are some subtle signs. So one of them for physical damage is you'll see brown/yellowing along the areas. For fungal infections and stuff like that, or diseases, you'll see like black spots kind of speckling across. Now there's no specific spot that you'd find it at. You can find it all along any of the petals. I haven't found any specifically on the trunk itself. I find it more common on the petals. Actually, no, that's not it. Never mind. Yeah, this tree doesn't have any diseases at the moment. I'm sure you saw my fancy toolbox and stuff. You know, you don't need any fancy tools whatsoever to take care of these jades. All you need is a nice pot. I put rocks here just to keep the soil down, and it's really for decorative means. The soil I have in it right now is kind of a mix of succulent, potting soils, and actually some soil from my backyard and sand. I did put a little bit more perlite in there just so the water kind of drains fast, just so that I won't risk the roots getting oversaturated. That is a problem. Roots don't like to be wet, and so the faster the water drains, the better. And so it might mean you need to water it a little bit more regularly, but as long as you pay attention, you'll notice it in the petals. It'll be very forgiving, and you'll have a great time. Let's say you've had a plant, or a jade tree more specifically, inside for extended periods of time. You'll know that it needs to be put outside, or it needs more sunlight, because the petals will start turning a very dark green. That's because it's trying to produce more chlorophyll in order to obviously get more energy. And so in order to fix that, you need to just put in more sunlight. But the problem is you have to acclimate it, just like fish. You know, you can't put fish into a tank right away. They'll go through shock and they'll most likely die, which is an unfortunate reality. And same with plants. If a plant's used to being in a dimly lit area or less sunlight, and then you put it in direct sunlight, it's going to burn really fast. And so what you have to do with these jades is just put it in light shaded areas for maybe a week, maybe even like 5 days too. It just depends. You just need to start, you'll know when the right time to put it in the sunlight is when the petals start lighting up. Little side note, look at my cat. He got scared. That's funny. Adorable little creature. I'll show you some basic troubleshooting. This right here is a very unfortunate circumstance. I was on vacation for an extended period of time and I was not able to take care of my plants, and they really dried up very much so, to the point where the leaves, or the petals I should say, are extremely paper thin. And you can see how they're supposed to be right here. They're very thick and they got really good rigidity. They don't bend or flex, anything like that, whereas these ones will really kind of bend and flex. That's just a telltale sign that it needs water. A very good indicator of healthy leaves, and if it has enough sunlight, is if it has red along the edges, kind of like what you're seeing right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but light green and red along the edges. That means it's getting enough sunlight and it's actually enjoying it. This right here, I would say, is a really good example of a very healthy leaf. It's got a light green shade to it, along with a little bit of a red edge. That's telling me that it's getting a lot of sunlight and it's getting just enough to basically thrive. I'm creating a little like jade forest. I'm kind of curious if I can create multiple Rafikis right here. I think it'd be pretty fun. So yeah, so a good telltale sign is light green leaves with a little bit of a red edge. Now don't be worried if you see the red intensify or anything like that. The only time that you fear that it might have too much sunlight, which is actually very hard to do, is if the whole entire leaf starts yellowing and stuff of that nature. Kind of like when you'll notice it in other plants where they start browning and stuff of that nature. This right here is my variegated version. Kind of same deal. I was on vacation again, and they kind of got neglected, but it's coming back very well. So these leaves actually were pretty similar to this one right here, and so I've watered it twice now in 2 days, which is a little bit less ideal than I want to, but I think extreme measures are needed in order to recover it. But the best way to take care of these is just treat it like it was in the desert. I love jade trees. They're a lot of fun and really easy to take care of, and I really recommend them as a first plant, especially just because they're very forgiving. You don't need any tools whatsoever as far as soil, basic succulent mix, or if you just want to make your own, like just make sure you add a little bit of sand or perlite to it. Perlite just loosens the soil, keeps water from collecting. The main goal is to make sure the roots don't stay damp. They don't really like to stay wet. Now these jade plants, they're originally naturally in the desert, so you don't have to worry about watering it as much as you would think. Actually, I water it maybe once a week, maybe, if that. I really just leave it outside and let the weather handle it. I'm a huge fan of jade trees, or more specifically succulents, for recommending to beginners, just because they're very forgiving and they will scream at you if you mess up. And it's not like in a horrible way. It's usually an easy fix. Maybe you didn't water enough, or maybe it has a slight disease and stuff like that, but that's okay. They're very forgiving when you mess up, and that's the great part about it. And that's probably the reason why I was able to take care of this jade tree for as long as I have. And so yeah, as far as beginning, I really recommend starting out with succulents. And yeah,